Hey guys, this week's video is dedicated to all our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel and all around the world. A huge YGP mazel tov to Daniel Jablansky and Leah on their engagement last week. So excited, mazel tov, mazel tov. Last week we spoke a little bit about how one of the sources of anxiety and anxiousness can be focusing on what we lack, what we're missing, and a beautiful idea from the Torah portion addressing that. I came across another idea for this week's Torah portion, a similar idea, which is another source for anxiety and anxiousness, could be low self-esteem, which leads to all sorts of negative feelings and behaviors. And this week's Torah portion provides a beautiful antidote, humility. And we say, how can that be an antidote? Are they not the same thing, or at least very similar? Isn't humility similar? This week's Torah portion, Behaalotecha, tells us that Moses was the most humble man who ever lived. Now, typically we view humility as recognizing our weaknesses or shortcomings, and operating from that framework keeps us humble. But Jewish mysticism says that's not what Moshe did. Moshe kept himself humble by looking at everybody else. And we say, how does that lead to humility? It would be the exact opposite. Moshe's resume stacked up way better than anyone else's any day of the week. He stood up to Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, leading the Jews out of Egypt, the splitting of the Red Sea, receiving the Torah from God himself on Mount Sinai. Who could compare? How would looking at everybody else lead to humility? It would lead to a superiority complex. Obviously, humility is not the same thing as an inferiority complex. If you think about it, if somebody's given an extraordinary gift, it can go two ways. Either they can say, I'm better than everyone else, look what I have. Or they could say, I was entrusted with something so valuable that somebody else was not trusted with. Now, the first way of thinking about it leads to superiority. I'm better than everyone else, and distance. Whereas the second one leads to a sense of responsibility to the gift that they're given, as well as to share that with others. Hashem doesn't judge us on how much we do. He judges us on, did we give our all? Did we do our best? What are our capabilities, our potential? If Daniel writes a check for $1,000 and Jack writes a check for $100, you may say, wow, look at Daniel giving $1,000. But then if you find out, Daniel's a multi-millionaire. Jack only has $1,000 in his account. Who actually did more? Moshe's humility came from because he recognized the unique talents and opportunities that God gave him. And when he saw other people doing so much with less, that made him think, am I actually doing my best? Am I doing the most? What if Yonatan was given the same opportunities and toolkit that God gave me? Maybe he would have accomplished way more. That's the humility that it brought to. We often compare ourselves to other people, which can lead to feeling low self-esteem. If we see others doing better than us and comparing ourselves to them, we might feel less than. But that's a fallacy, because we're not better off if we're doing better than someone else, and we're not doing poorly if somebody else is doing better than us. The only person we should be comparing ourselves to is ourselves. Am I better than yesterday? The person I was yesterday? Am I fulfilling my best? Am I doing the most that I could? That's the only question. As the great Rabbi Zusha Pali said, when I come to heaven, they're not going to ask me, Zusha, why weren't you as great as Abraham, our forefather, or Moses? They're going to say, Zusha, why weren't you as great as Zusha? Meaning, every person has a toolkit, circumstances, opportunities that they're given. Are we doing the most with those? That's the only question we have to ask ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.